Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Hong Kong and we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel once before. Now, the last beer that I had from these guys was really pretty impressive, and it was my first review from them, despite them being a very well-known and well-respected and well-established Hong Kong brewery. And the main reason for that was that it took quite a lot of research to get everything together when it came to the brewery notes. But thankfully we have that, and now we can look at a whole host of their beers. But the beer we're going to have a look at today is one that is very well thought of. It's a style that I very much enjoy, and there are quite a few different versions of this one now as well, so we'll need to look at those in future videos. But needless to say, I'm very curious to see what this beer is going to have in store for us. I think it's going to be a little bit old school, which I'm really looking forward to. So hopefully it is as good as I've heard. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review. And as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head over to Hong Kong Island. We're going to go to the eastern part of the island to Chai Wan, and that means that we're going to have a look at another beer from the wonderful Hong Kong Beer Company. So this particular beer is called Mai Po. This is the 2022 edition. It comes in at 10.5% ABV, and this one is a bourbon barrel-aged Imperial Stout. So yeah, I think this should be really quite interesting. The 2023 version, of course, has already been released, and this year they did quite a few different barrels with it actually, which were also supposed to have been very good. So yeah, this should be quite an interesting one to try, and I'm glad that I'm finally getting around to reviewing this particular beer, because it's been sat in my fridge for a little while actually. So yeah, let's crack on then and see what this beer is going to have in store for us. So, as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Hong Kong Beer Company before, and we will no doubt add more to that list at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Hong Kong playlist, along with a number of other things. And do make sure you check out the playlist of beers from other places as well, because there are some very interesting beers that have been reviewed on the channel these days. So yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a little bit about Hong Kong Beer Company once again. Like I said, this is a little bit of a complex history with this brewery, but the history of Hong Kong Beer Company goes back to 1995, when the company was originally established as South China Brewing Company. So the man behind this venture was David Haynes, who is originally from Colorado, and he's a clinical psychologist by trade, but was also a big beer enthusiast. But his wife worked as a China analyst in one of the big financial firms, and she encouraged him to go for it and found his own company when he expressed an interest. So he went over to the US to visit various different microbreweries and do some fact finding, and around this time he encountered a guy called Peter Bordeaux, who was the president of Sazerac, a major American beverage distributor. But after asking a lot of questions, he agreed to help finance David's startup, and things were getting off the ground. But apparently it took about a year to navigate the Hong Kong bureaucracy, and they eventually managed to get the legal right to brew beer. But they opened the brewery in the Vita Tower in Aberdeen on the south of Hong Kong Island, and they released their first beer, which was called Crooked Island Ale, and this beer spread by word of mouth through the different pubs in Hong Kong. But the brewery had a few years of success, but then it started to sputter, and eventually they became a contract brewery. But the company was then acquired by Harmony Assets in 2003, and they changed the name to Hong Kong Beer Company. But Harmony distributed their beers through their own bar chain, which was the El Grand one, But production was only around 120,000 litres per year by 2009, so it was a pretty small operation. But the quality of the beer apparently continued to suffer as well, and they eventually ended up, contracting pretty much all of their beer, from what I understand. But a few years later, in 2013, the brewery was purchased by Devin Otto Kimball and Daniel Flores, who are the team behind Brewworks Brewery and Restaurant down in Singapore. But they stayed involved with the company until 2020, and under their guidance, the brewery was completely revamped from the ground up. They brought in brewmaster Simon Pesh, who previously worked for Pyramid Brewery in Berkeley over in California, and he stayed with the company until 2018. But they relocated the brewery to Chai Wan on the eastern part of Hong Kong Island, and there they're operating a 20 US barrel brew kit, which is around 3,200 litres, and that's from JNVW Systems, and today they're producing in the region of 600,000 litres of beer per year. There apparently was another change in ownership in 2020, so one of the Singaporean guys left, but these days the current brew team is headed by Philip Rankmore and Matt Bradley under the guidance of James Waters. So Philip is from Sydney, and he originally studied chemical engineering and then later gained his brewing diploma from the Institute of Brewing and Distilling before going to work in Korea for Goose Island and then for Budnamu as well. But apparently he also spent time teaching brewers in Korea and in Hong Kong. So yeah, quite an interesting guy. I've actually met him and he's pretty nice. So big shout out to him actually, because I was talking to him about his beer. But yeah, as of May 2024, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 80 different beers according to Untappd, and yeah, a lot of people really rate this brewery for their quality, and their stuff is pretty damn solid actually, so I recommend that you check it out if you get the chance. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about Hong Kong Beer Company for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on and have a little look at the beer itself, since your brewery history section is done. Just going to turn that light down a little bit because I think it's just a touch too bright for the golden shiny stuff. Yeah, that's a little bit better actually. But yeah, it tells you a wee bit about the beer on the side here. So it says Maipo, and incidentally Maipo is a nature reserve here in the Hong Kong SAR, but this one, it says barrel aged in Knob Creek 9-year bourbon barrels. Maipo Imperial Stout has rich roasted coffee and chocolate flavours infused with notes of maple syrup, oak and caramel, a dark full body with creamy foam and silky smooth mouthfeel. But like I said, comes in at 10.5% ABV, this one. I think it's going to be really nice. I've heard very good things about it, but there you can see the label on this one. The ones that they released this year in 2023 that had different barrels. There was a cognac barrel one and I think a rum barrel as well, if I'm not mistaken. But these ones had different trim around the label and stuff like that. So this is kind of cool to do this one first because it is that little bit older. But there you can see the Hong Kong Beer Company bottle cap. So I think the camera's now trying to zoom in on. There you go. So I need to keep that for my bottle cap collection. But like I said, this one is 10.5% ABV, and I think it will be like a proper old school RIS, this one with the bourbon backbone. So let's try this and see how we get on. But very nicely presented. We'll get it out and into the glass and see what we have. Got the bottle cap off nicely. There you go. Don't know how well it's going to focus. Yeah, camera's not wanting to focus today. I don't know what's going on with it. But yeah, let's get the beer out into the glass and see how we go. Very curious about this. Sugar up the last wee bit. And there we are. So, no sediment at the bottom of the bottle, but I did sugar it up right enough. So yeah, there we are. Let me just balance that out for you. But yeah, as you can see, getting a hair stuck on my finger. But yeah, you can see that this beer's poured with about a half finger of a frothy, I would say light kind of tan head there. But yeah, it looks really, really nice. You can see small bubbles sitting on the surface of the liquid, and it stays foamy all the way up to the top of the head there. But you can see lovely dark ebony rosewood colour, and that is to be expected of this particular style of beer. So remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect its colour as well. But yeah, it's quite difficult to affect the colour of a black beer like a stout, you know, we can say that for sure. But yeah, the head on this one you can see is just kind of fading away a little bit to be a thinner foamy layer, and you've got that nice ring around the edge of the glass. But yeah, one or two big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass, and a few little ones just going up towards the bottom of the head there. But yeah, there are little bits of sediment just in the bottom of the glass there. It's all natural though, so it should be pretty nice, this one actually. So yeah, I don't know if we really need to say much more about the appearance of this one, but it is pretty much in tune with what you would expect of an Imperial Stout. So yeah, let's take a look at the aroma then and see how we go. So let's do this. Really curious. Ooh, I think that's going to be really nice. Yeah, proper old school RIS, this one, which is kind of what I wanted when I got this beer. I think this is going to be pretty damn good actually. I love an Imperial Stout and a big brown sugary Scotch ale or barley wine every so often, but yeah, I think this is going to be pretty good. So in terms of the general feel of the beer, you can smell that love it. It's got a good balance to it. It's got that lovely barrely character. You've got the nice kind of little bit of spirit in there as well. Proper RIS, old school RIS, but very smooth in its aroma. You've got a wee bit of fruit and a wee bit of hoppy character. But yeah, if this is the 2022 release, then yeah, it's been in the bottle, what, about a year and a half, something like that. So yeah, quite happy with that. This is going to be interesting for sure. So let's just break the aroma down and describe it for you that wee bit more in depth. So the backbone of this beer is that lovely, very smooth American oak. So yeah, lovely, very smooth American oak coming out of this one. And as I've said before, you know, American oak is quite different to European oak. European oak is a little bit smoother and a little bit drier, I would say, but the American oak has a little touch more vanilla to it. So within the woody character in this beer, yeah, you're getting that smooth but bright American oak, but with the wee touch of vanilla there. And of course, you're getting the bourbon coming out of this one as well. And for me, you know, I've not really drank all that many American bourbons because, you know, we had Scotch back home, Scotch whiskey. So yeah, the bourbon for me has always been a little bit sweeter and had a little bit more bite to it than the very smooth Scotch whiskies. So you can smell a little bit of that in this. You can smell that kind of bourbon sugary kind of note coming out of this one, but also has a wee bit of like aromaticity and bite to it, which is interesting. I don't know if I've actually ever tried Knob Creek, come to think of it, but yeah, maybe I should. But yeah, the bourbony notes that you get out of this one are certainly quite oily, a little touch toasty almost. And then yeah, you've got a wee bit of aromaticity to it. But the beer itself, the stout itself, it has a lovely kind of roasty toasty character to it. You've got that lovely roasty toasty malty backbone coming out of it. So yeah, roasty toasty malty backbone. On top of that, there's definitely some kind of rye bready presence as well. So yeah, roasty toasty well fired bread crust. A little bit of a, I do want to say there's maybe a little bit of Carafa in this one actually, because the malty notes really remind me of German Carafa. Carafa, incidentally, is a trademarked type of malt by the Weirmann maltery in Bamberg in Franconia, Bayern, Germany. Very famous maltery actually, the old red building that's industrial heritage. But yeah, you just get this little bit of kind of dry, slightly toasty bread crust out of this, which makes me think there's a wee bit of Carafa in this. But yeah, on top of that, so you've got some sweet rye bread. There's a little bit of a kind of, yeah, there's a wee bit of a wholemeal brown bready character coming out of this one as well. But I'm getting a lot of kind of chocolate. There's a sort of, you know, 70-80% cocoa chocolate in there, but there's also a wee bit of like a brighter, more milky chocolate. And at the same time, I'm getting little elements of, you know, that kind of oily, sticky chocolate brownie coming out of this one. So that smells really nice. There is a little bit of a drier cocoa nib to this beer as well, which is interesting. But on top of that, you've got some really nice brown sugary characters coming out of this one. And at this point, we should mention that one of the ways you can play with an Imperial Stout is to give it a longer wort boil. And if you do that, you get more leathery, smooth brown sugars out of the beer. But the other way you can play with the Imperial Stout is to do a double mash, which is quite common these days as well. But yeah, the brown sugars in this one make me think that it hasn't had too long a wort boil. It does have that little bit of smoothness to it, and you're getting some of that kind of silky, chocolatey character out of this one that you can get when you age Imperial Stout. So yeah, above the kind of the chocolatey layer, you start to get the brown sugary notes, and there is a little bit of that leathery kind of smoothness to them, which is nice. A little bit of a toasty brown sugar as well, and I'm getting a wee bit of a kind of treacle molasses type note and a brighter caramel coming out of it as well. So yeah, the way that all of that pieces together, I think, is really very, very nice. So gets a thumbs up from me on the malty side of things. There's quite a lot going on in this one, and I think we're going to get more out of it as we go into the aftertaste. It's got a wee touch of nuttiness as well, actually. So yeah, on the hoppy side of things, it's kind of what you'd expect. We have to remember this beer's been in the bottle about a year, 18 months, something like that, so quite a little bit of the hoppy character will have dropped out of this one. But it feels quite familiar. I think there's probably a little bit of Galena or something like that, maybe Williamette, that's in here. But certainly you do get a nice little touch of, there's a nice little touch of earthiness coming out of this one. So yeah, nice little bit of earthiness in there, a little bit of a kind of herbal character as well. Yeah, wee bit of earthiness, wee bit, pardon me, herbal character, and then yeah, you've got some nice floral aromaticity in this one actually, which I think is really, really nice. So yeah, big floral aromaticity to this one, still there. Then you've got a wee bit of grassy character too, but behind that you have all of the fruity type notes as well, which are really interesting. And the fruit again is quite familiar. For me, there's a little bit of a kind of sharper raisin and a kind of cherry type note in this one. So yeah, there's a kind of cherry character in the beer as well. But yeah, raisins, juicy plum, quite a bit of oily fig, and then some blackberry and black curranty notes as well. But the fruit in this one is quite rich, and it has that little bit of sharpness to it, which I find really quite interesting. So yeah, you can see, I think you can see how humid it is. The rooms, you know, my apartment is very, very humid today, particularly this room for some reason. But yeah, you can see just from the difference in temperature. This beer, I took it out of the fridge when I came in about half an hour ago, and it's still sweating away because yeah, I'm just impressed by that. But all in all, the aroma of this beer is really nice. It strikes me as being a proper old school RIS. But as I always say, take a bit of time to enjoy that aroma. I think it is time though for us to get stuck into this. So this one is the Maipo 2022 vintage, 10.5% Imperial Stout, aged in Knob Creek bourbon barrels for 9 months. This one's from Hong Kong Beer Company in Chai Wan over on Hong Kong Island. Let's get stuck in. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Oh, that's very, very smooth. Lovely beer, that. It's not quite as old school RIS as I thought it was going to be. This is a very smooth one, this actually, so I like that about it for sure. So yeah, this really is very, very nice, so it gets a big thumbs up from me. On the general vibe of this beer, you do get a bit more of the kind of old school roasty toasty RIS coming out of this beer into the aftertaste. But in the beginning, this one, it comes across as really, really smooth and almost kind of creamy, to be honest with you. So yeah, I like how that pieces together actually. Yeah, this is awesome. I can see why a lot of people kind of raved about this one. This is really, really good. So yeah, big thumbs up to Philip and the other guys at HK Beer Co. So yeah, where do we start with this one then? We'll go to the middle third of the palate, as we always do. So yeah, middle third of your palate then, you can feel the backbone of the beer. You have this really nice kind of smooth oaky woody character coming out of this one. So yeah, you've got that nice kind of smooth American oak in there. As you move further forward on the middle third of your palate, you get that wee bit of you do get that nice little bit of vanilla coming out of it, and you feel the kind of bourbon spirit just sitting on top. So yeah, the way all of that pieces together, I think, is really, really very nice. So yeah, it is awesome. The bourbon, as I suspected it would be, has just that little bit of aromaticity to it and a wee bit of a toasty brown sugary note underneath. But yeah, all in all, it's great. I think I need to go and try a little bit of Knob Creek now and see if I can actually enjoy it. So yeah, that would be quite interesting. But above the bourbon spirit layer, of course, you start to get the roasty, toasty, well fired. You start to get that roasty, toasty, well fired bread crusty backbone in there. But it's not too dry and it's not too harsh actually. It's kind of quite smooth. So above that roasty, toasty sort of thing, you start to get the you start to get that smooth kind of more like rye bready type character out of this one. It still has a bit of bread crusty note to it, and again that makes me wonder if there is a wee bit of carafa in this one. So yeah, the way that this beer goes together, in a sense, it almost comes across as a little bit Imperial milk stouty, to be honest with you. It kind of reminds me a wee bit of Nerd Brewing back in Sweden, who I do miss. But yeah, on top of that kind of more kind of smooth rye bready bread crust, yeah, you can feel there is a layer of like a kind of sweet oily rye bread in there. Above that you start to get a wholemeal brown bready character, but then above that there's a layer of it's kind of like chocolate muffin like. I wouldn't go as far as saying that it's like big and sticky and kind of brownie like. It is more like a kind of chocolate sponge or a chocolate muffin kind of layer in there, and that particular layer has a little touch of like nuttiness to it, like hazelnut or something like that. So that's pretty interesting. But above the chocolate spongy layer you do get the straight up chocolate. So at the back of that middle third of the palate you're getting a little bit of a more kind of cocoa nibby sort of dryness to the beer, but then as you move further forward you can feel that it goes from being kind of 60% cocoa chocolate. It smells like it's darker in the aroma than it actually turns out to be in the flavour. But yeah, as you move further forward on that middle third of your palate you can feel that it gradually comes to be like 30 or 40% cocoa, and it shows you that more milky chocolatey character, which I think is very, very nice. And then above that you have above that you've got the kind of more brown sugary notes coming out of the beer. So yeah, the brown sugary notes in this beer are really, really nice. You've got that lovely kind of smooth, you've got that lovely smooth, leathery brown sugary character coming out of it, which I think is great. And I don't, just from the impression of this one, I don't think it's had too long a wort boil, but it wouldn't surprise me if it's north of 6 hours, maybe close to like 10 or 12 or something like that. That's the kind of impression that the leathery part of the brown sugars give. But above that, you can feel, above that layer, you've got a nice little kind of circle in the middle of your palate. So you've got it's got a few layers to it. There's a little bit of toasty brown sugar underneath. There's a bit of kind of sweeter caramel above that. And then in the dead center of your palate, you just have a wee bit of this oily treacle molasses. And that is, of course, the boozy part of the beer. But then, yeah, you start to get these little nutty characters coming out of the beer into the aftertaste as well. So, yeah. the way that all of that kind of pieces together, I think is really quite nice. So yeah, I think this beer, the middle third of the palette where the complexity really lies, is very nicely done. So let's go to the back third of the palette then. The border region between middle and back third of your palette, of course, you get a little bit of the kind of rye bread in the base, the brown bread in the middle, and the wee bit of sort of chocolate sponge sitting on top. And as I've often said, you know, your back third of your palette is going to give you very similar flavours to the middle third of your palette. But, pardon me, just at different intensities. But do remember that sweeter flavours come out further forward on the palette, whereas more dry and bitter flavours come out a little bit further back. So yeah, the base of that back third of your palette, you can feel there's a nice little bit of woody character in there, so you can feel that, and the wood is that little bit drier. The bourbon spirit layer is a little bit more toasty and dry too, but then yeah, you've got the rye bready layer, which feels a little bit lighter and more airy, also drier. The wholemeal brown bready layer, which feels a little bit lighter and more airy and also a wee bit drier, and then yeah, you get some of the chocolate sponge above that, and some of the toasty elements of the drier toasty elements of the leathery brown sugar just creep over the top of that. So yeah, above everything else on the back third of the palette, you start to get the yeasty side of the beer. So let's look at that. Yeah, the leathery side of this beer really just gives it a lot of sweetness into the aftertaste, which I think is great. But yeah, the yeasty side of this beer, in the middle of it, you have this kind of dense, sweet, rye bready type note, and as you move further out from that, it becomes very, very sweet, like a sweeter wholemeal brown bread, and then the very edge of it is like a slightly toasty, bread crusty character. So yeah, the way that this one goes together, I think, is really quite interesting. I do like that about it. So yeah, definitely you can feel the flavour on the back third of your palate is taller, and some of the yeasty character comes out further into the aftertaste as well. You can feel that. So yeah, back third of your palate, you can feel the flavour is taller. Then as you move further forward into the middle third of your tongue, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. So yeah, I do like how all of that pieces together in this one. On the hoppy side of things then, and you know, with this being a bourbon barrel aged beer, barrel aged of any description, you always sacrifice the hops and the, you know, sort of hoppy flavours to get that more infused woody sort of thing. So the hoppy character has dropped out of this one a little bit in comparison to what it would have been fresh, of course. But yeah, you get some of that in the barrel and some of it from the fact that this bottle is about a year old. So yeah. In the back corners of the palate though, you do still get a little bit of earthiness there. As you move further forward, it's a little touch herbal, and as you move toward the kind of front corners of your palate, it shows you a little bit more kind of floral aromaticity, which I think is really nice. But round the front curve of the tongue, it's a wee bit lighter and more grassy, I would say. But you know, the green component on this beer is quite smooth and it is quite muted because of that barrel aging and the fact that Imperial Stouts are just not the most hop forward of beer styles. So yeah, that's worth bearing in mind for sure. But yeah, let's focus on the front third of your palate then and the fruity side of things. So yeah, fruity side of the beer is fruity side of the beer in this one is really quite nice actually. But yeah, the front third of your palate, the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again, a little bit of kind of rye bready character on the base, the wholemeal bread in the middle, and the sort of chocolate sponge on top. But then the base of that front third of your palate, lovely smooth American oak. Get a bit more vanilla out of it on that front third of your palate too, but you've got the bourbon layer, which is very slightly toasty, and then yeah, you have the kind of toasty bread crust, the rye bready base, and you also have the brown bread sitting on top of it, and a wee bit of the chocolate kind of layer as well, the smooth chocolate. Then you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. Yeah, so let's look at that fruity side of things then. So for me, the fruity side of the beer, yeah, when you take it in, it's got a lovely, very juicy, kind of plummy character to it. So yeah, at the back of that front third of your palate, lovely, juicy, kind of plummy notes. Yeah, juicy, plummy character. Underneath that, you've got some kind of sultanas as well, which are quite nice. So juicy, plummy notes, sultanas. Then yeah, as you move further forward, it's as you move further forward from that, you start to get a little bit, there's a little bit of like an almost oily pear in this one, which is quite interesting. So yeah, sultanas, pear, a little bit of fig, and then yeah, you have, as you move into the front half of that front third of your tongue, you start to get like a little bit of a blackcurranty type quality, and there's just a wee bit of blackberry sitting on top of that, which is nice. So yeah, the fruity character that comes out of this one I think is really nice, but yeah, you get more and more like blackcurrant, fig, and sort of sultana type notes out of this beer into the aftertaste. Maybe more of a datey character actually, which is quite interesting. But yeah, all in all, the flavour of this beer really is very nice. I wasn't quite expecting something quite as smooth and kind of a beer that, you know, an Imperial Stout that had such a big dry sweetness to it as this one has. But yeah, I think it's lovely, so it gets a big thumbs up from me actually. So yeah, let's round off this review with a wee look at the mouthfeel then. So for me, this beer, I would say kind of bottom end of full bodied. The carbonation is quite smooth in this one, of course. It does have a very clean mouthfeel to it though, but at the same time it's kind of silky and almost creamy, which is quite interesting. IBU wise, this beer is kind of a bit lower. I'd say it's probably, you know, 30-ish IBU at most. Does it tell you on the bottle? Some of them do here in Hong Kong, but yeah, no, I think the IBU on this one is pretty low actually. It's more of a smooth and kind of sweet, like dry stout almost, to be honest with you. So yeah, 30 or 40 IBUs I think is about right for this one. So like we said with the malt base, underneath you've got the dryness of the wood, a bit of the sweetness and toastiness of the barrel, lovely kind of smooth, sweet character from the bready notes and things in there, bit of chocolate, bit of dry brown sugar on top of that and the kind of nuttiness and stuff into the aftertaste. And the way that all of that goes together, I think is really nice. Hoppy character, as we said, there's a little bit of grassiness and floral note in there, but as I say, you're not getting much hoppy bitterness in this beer, and you've got a lovely juicy, dry, fruity character come out of it into the aftertaste as well. But all in all, beautiful, beautiful beer this one, and I certainly would be very curious to try some of the other variants of this one and see how they turn out. But yeah, really enjoyed this. Not quite what I was expecting, to be honest with you. I was thinking something a wee bit more kind of toasty and bitter, but really, really nice beer, this one. Really, 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 really like it. So yeah, let's leave it at that. This one was the Maipo 2022 edition, a 10.5% Knob Creek Bourbon Barrel Aged Imperial Stout from the wonderful Hong Kong Beer Company in Chai Wan on Hong Kong Island here in the Hong Kong SAR. So yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below, and let me know what your favourite beers are from Hong Kong Beer Company as well, and we will no doubt return to these guys again at some point in the very near future. But until then, Slàinte, Skål, cheers, check out my social media, check out their social media, and I'll see you guys in the next review. Ciao just now.